Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We like to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the finance world, and you flagged this as something you're interested in. So we're diving deep today into Ethiopia's stock exchange, or I guess upcoming stock exchange. It's
Mhm.
it's supposed to be launching soon, right?
Yeah, late this year, early next. It's a pretty ambitious timeline.
Ambitious. I like that. And they're really shaking things up, it seems, right? From what I've read, it's like a joint effort between the government and the private sector.
That's right. Unusual partnership to get a market up and running.
It is unusual, and that's what piqued my interest. Whenever I hear government and private sector teaming up on something like a stock exchange, well, I just have to know more.
Yeah.
How does that even work?
Right. And it's a great question because it gets at what makes this particular stock exchange, or at least the IDEA of it, so fascinating. We should probably start with the fact that Ethiopia is not like totally new to this whole stock market thing.
Oh,
Yeah, they actually had a stock exchange back in the 1960s.
no way. I had no idea.
Yep. But then it was dissolved during a time when the government was more socialist, let's say.
Wow. So this isn't just building from scratch, they're rebuilding, reimagining things.
Totally. And there's definitely this sense that they want to do it differently this time, maybe create a model that's truly, as some people are calling it, African.
Interesting. So not just copying what everyone else is doing.
Exactly. There's talk of incorporating social impact investing, even drawing on some of the traditional ways communities manage finances.
That's really interesting. Okay, so before we get too far ahead, let's do a roll call. Who are the big players we need to know about? We've got what is it, the ECMA?
The Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, yeah, they're the regulators, making sure everything's above board, investors are protected.
Right, right. Very important job.
Huge job. Overseeing not just the exchange itself, but brokers, credit rating agencies,
Yeah.
anything related to this new capital market they're setting up.
Wow. Okay, so a lot of power there.
Definitely.
And then there's the actual exchange itself, right?
The Ethiopian Securities Exchange, or ESX.
The ESX. That's where the actual buying and selling happens.
Yep. And this is where that whole public-private partnership really comes in. The ESX is structured to be majority owned by the private sector. Government's capped at 25% for.
Interesting. So it's not like a completely state-run thing.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Seems like they're really trying to send a signal that they're open for business.
Makes sense. But then there's another player in all of this, right? The EIH, sure.
The Ethiopia Investment Holdings, that's their sovereign wealth fund, and they're massively important here.
Okay, how so?
Well, they've been really hands-on in setting up the ESX, but on top of that, they've got this, huge portfolio of companies, estimated to be worth something like $38 billion.
38 billion. Wow. Are there any standouts in that portfolio, companies that investors might be, I don't know, excited about?
It's tough to say without being in their boardrooms or anything.
Yeah.
But there are definitely sectors that look promising in Ethiopia, purely from a growth perspective, like renewable energy. They've got incredible potential there, hydro, geothermal, that sort of thing.
Right, right. And what about their tech scene? I've been seeing more and more about Addis Ababa becoming a kind of a startup hub, especially in fintech.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's where you'll see the really exciting long-term growth, job creation, all of that.
Yeah.
And it actually speaks to one of the big challenges that ESX is going to face.
Yeah.
Getting enough companies and the right kind of companies
Right.
to sign up, to list.
Yeah, because they're aiming for 50 at launch, right? Which, I mean, that's a good start.
It is a good start, but getting those big names, banks, insurance firms, that's the easy part, relatively speaking.
Oh, I see.
Think about it like what's happening in Nairobi's tech scene. Lots of energy there. Ethiopia could have the same thing. But those startups, they need money. They need capital.
And that's where the stock exchange comes in.
Exactly. Attracting those smaller, faster-growing businesses, that's going to determine if the ESX really takes off in the long run.
So it's more than just having the building, the trading floor, all that.
Way more. It's about having the expertise to actually run a stock market. And that's another hurdle for Ethiopia. They don't have a lot of the human capital you need for this sort of thing right now. Brokers, fund managers, all of it.
Sounds like a steep learning curve.
It'd be huge, but also a huge opportunity. They're already working with groups like FSD Africa, doing capacity building, training programs.
So building the actual exchange A&D, building the workforce to support it, happening at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what was the expertise like back in the 60s when they had that first exchange?
Right. That's a good question. Was it similar? Did they have the same struggles?
It's actually really interesting to look back at that time. It wasn't, perfect, but the exchange was pretty active for a while. You had companies from All sorts of industries. Ethiopia Abattoirs, Bottling Company of Ethiopia, even Indo-Ethiopian textiles.
Wow. Okay, that's quite the mix.
Right?
It just goes to show this isn't totally uncharted territory for them. They have a chance to look at their own history, what worked, what didn't.
Totally. They're in this unique position to kind of, I don't know, learn from themselves, adapt those old lessons to how the world works now in the 21st century.
Fascinating. But okay, this is all super interesting, but I know some of our listeners might be thinking, so what? How does this affect me?
It's a fair question, right? Like, okay, Ethiopia Stock Exchange, that's cool and all, but
But what's the takeaway for someone sitting at their desk right now?
exactly. And, it's tempting to think, well, I don't live in Ethiopia, not planning on investing there directly, so,
So who cares?
right. But that's, I think, missing the bigger picture. This is about more than just one country or one stock exchange. It's a signal,
A signal of what?
to the rest of the world that Ethiopia is serious about economic growth, that they're embracing a more, I don't know, market-driven approach, and that has ripple effects.
Interesting. So even if I'm not buying shares in like Ethiopian coffee beans or something.
Even then, this
Mm.
could still impact your portfolio indirectly.
Mm.
Think about it. More investment flowing into Africa in general, that helps everyone.
Because a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly. It can mean higher returns for folks who are already invested in emerging markets, maybe through mutual funds or pension plans.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think one of my mutual funds does have a little sliver dedicated to frontier markets, which includes Africa. I'll have to keep an eye on that.
There you go. See, it's all connected. But beyond the money, I think it's important to remember the human side of this too.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the financial side, but at the end of the day, this is about people's lives.
100%. If this exchange is successful, it could mean jobs, higher incomes, a better quality of life for a lot of Ethiopians.
That's what makes it so compelling. It's not just about profits, it's about potential.
Exactly. It's about the possibility of positive change. And that's always something to be excited about, don't you think?
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been fascinating. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive with us.
My pleasure. Always happy to geek out about this stuff.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us. It's a story we'll definitely be following closely, so stay tuned. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring.